I gave my daughter $200,000 on a Thursday afternoon in March, and 3 months later, she slapped me across the face in front of 67 wedding guests. The bills were crisp hundreds, banded in neat stacks inside a leather briefcase. Catherine took it from my hands without meeting my eyes, her fingers trembling slightly as she clicked the locks open. She counted every bill twice while I stood in her tiny apartment, watching rain streak down the windows. "This is for the house," I said. "The one you and Daniel talked about." "I know, Dad." Her voice was flat, distant. I should have seen it then. Should have noticed how she didn't hug me, didn't thank me properly. Just nodded and set the briefcase on her kitchen counter like I'd delivered groceries. That money represented 32 years of work at Patterson Engineering. Every overtime shift, every skipped vacation, every lunch I packed instead of bought. I'd raised Catherine alone after her mother died when she was 6. Breast cancer, fast and merciless. For 27 years it had been just us two against the world. The wedding happened in June at some overpriced vineyard 2 hours north of the city. Daniel's family paid for most of it, which should have been my first clue. The Ashfords had money, old money, the kind that came with expectations and demands. Daniel himself was pleasant enough, worked in finance, talked about markets and opportunities with the enthusiasm of a man who'd never known real struggle. I wore my best suit, the charcoal one I'd bought for Catherine's college graduation, sat in the second row on the bride's side, watching my daughter walk down an aisle scattered with white rose petals. She looked beautiful. She looked like her mother. The ceremony was fine. Standard vows, a string quartet, champagne that probably cost more per bottle than I spent on groceries in a month. I made small talk with distant relatives and Daniel's corporate friends, men in expensive watches, who asked what I did and then found reasons to drift away when I answered. The reception started at sunset. Long tables under strings of lights, waiters in crisp white shirts carrying trays of food I couldn't pronounce. I found my assigned seat at a table with Catherine's college friends, women in their early 30s who talked about yoga retreats and kitchen renovations. I was halfway through my salmon when Catherine appeared at my shoulder. "Dad, can we talk?" She wasn't smiling. I followed her away from the tables, toward the edge of the property where the vineyard gave way to dark woods. Daniel stood waiting, hands in his pockets, face unreadable in the fading light. "We need to discuss the house," Catherine said. My stomach tightened. "What about it?" "We closed last week. Everything's finalized." She glanced at Daniel, who nodded slightly. "The thing is, Dad, we've been thinking about our privacy, about starting our marriage on the right foot." "Of course," I said slowly. "So we think it's best if you understand some boundaries." Catherine's voice had taken on a rehearsed quality, like she'd practiced these words. "The house is ours now, legally, financially, completely ours." "I know that, sweetheart. I gave you the money for the down payment, not a stake in the property." "Right." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We just want to make sure we're all clear. No unexpected visits, no showing up without calling first, no assuming you have keys or access." Something cold settled in my chest. "Are you asking me not to visit my own daughter?" "I'm asking you to respect our space," she said, voice hardening. "You're not welcome to just drop by whenever you feel like it. This isn't your house, Dad. It's ours." The words hung in the air between us. Behind me, I could hear music from the reception, laughter and clinking glasses. "I gave you $200,000, I said quietly, "and we're grateful." Daniel spoke for the first time, his tone smooth and practiced. "But that was a gift, Tom. Gifts don't come with strings attached." "I'm not talking about strings. I'm talking about common decency, about family." "We are family," Catherine said. "That's why we're having this conversation now, setting clear expectations so there's no confusion later." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. When had she become this person? When had the little girl who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during long car rides turned into someone who could take my life savings and then tell me to stay away? "You know what?" I said, voice steady despite the rage building in my throat. "I need to use the restroom. Excuse me." I walked back toward the reception, past the happy couples and the dancing and the celebration of my daughter's new life. Past the table where my half-eaten dinner sat cold. Past the parking lot to my car, a 12-year-old Honda that had seen better days. I drove for 20 minutes before pulling into a gas station. Sat in the parking lot with my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. My phone buzzed. A text from Catherine. "Where did you go? People are asking." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my phone's browser and searched for motels in the area. Found one 8 miles away, a budget inn with vacancies and rates by the week. The rooms smelled like cigarettes and cheap soap. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let myself feel it. The betrayal. The shock. The white-hot anger that made my vision blur. But underneath the anger was something else. Something colder and sharper. A clarity I hadn't felt in years. I'd spent 3 decades building a life for my daughter, sacrificing my own comfort, my own dreams, so she could have opportunities I never had, and she'd taken everything I gave her and used it to shut me out. The old Tom would have called her, tried to talk it out, bent over backward to understand her perspective and make peace. But that Tom died in the vineyard parking lot. I pulled out my phone again and opened my banking app. Looked at my savings account, now sitting at $14,000 after the gift to Catherine. Not much for a man my age, but enough. Enough to start. Then I did something I hadn't done in 5 years. I opened my email and scrolled back, way back, to a message I'd archived but never deleted. An offer from my old college roommate, James, who now ran a private investigation firm in Philadelphia. "If you ever need anything," the email said, "and I mean anything, you call me." I started typing. 3 days after the wedding, I was still at the Budget Inn. Catherine had called twice, left voicemails that started with frustration and ended with something that almost sounded like worry. I didn't call back. James arrived on Tuesday morning, driving a black Ford Expedition that looked out of place in the motel parking lot. He'd aged since I last saw him. More gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes. But he still had that same sharp intelligence, the kind that made him dangerous in a chess game or a negotiation. We shook hands in the parking lot. "You look like hell, Tommy." "Feel worse." He followed me into the room, took in the unmade bed and empty coffee cups with a single glance. "So, your message was cryptic. Want to fill in the blanks?" I told him everything. The money, the house, the conversation at the wedding. James listened without interrupting, his face neutral and professional. When I finished, he leaned back in the room's only chair. "And you want what exactly? Revenge? Payback?" "I want the truth," I said. "I want to know what I'm dealing with, because my daughter didn't become this person overnight." "You think the husband's influencing her?" "I think something's not right. The Catherine I raised wouldn't cut me out like this, not over wanting privacy." I rubbed my face, feeling the stubble I hadn't bothered to shave. "I need to know what's really going on. Then I can decide what to do about it." James nodded slowly. "I can look into it. Daniel Ashford, you said? Works in finance?" "Ashford Capital Management. His father runs it. Old money family?" That's the impression I got. "Okay." James pulled out his phone and started taking notes. "Give me a week. I'll dig into Daniel's background, his finances, any red flags. If there's something to find, I'll find it." "What do you need from me?" "Nothing right now. Just stay reachable." "And Tom?" He met my eyes. "Prepare yourself. Sometimes when you go looking for truth, you find things you wish you hadn't." After James left, I checked out of the motel and drove back to my apartment in the city. It was a one-bedroom place I'd rented after selling my house 3 years ago, when the maintenance had become too much and the memories too heavy. The building was old but clean, full of retirees and young couples just starting out. I went back to work at Patterson Engineering, where I'd been a senior structural engineer for over 2 decades. My colleagues asked about the wedding, and I gave them the simple version. Beautiful ceremony, nice reception, very happy for Catherine. Nobody needed to know about the rest. The days blurred together. Wake up, go to work, review blueprints and load calculations, come home, eat something from the microwave, sleep. My mind kept circling back to Catherine's face in the vineyard, the cold way she'd dismissed me. James called on a Thursday, exactly 1 week after I'd contacted him. "You free for lunch?" We met at a diner downtown, the kind with vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting on the burner since morning. James arrived with a manila folder tucked under his arm. He slid it across the table. "You're not going to like this." I opened the folder. Inside were printouts, financial statements, copies of documents. My eyes scanned the pages, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. "Daniel Ashford," James said, voice low, "is in debt up to his eyeballs. His father's company is on the verge of bankruptcy, has been for about 18 months. They've been moving money around, selling assets, taking out loans. The wedding you attended, paid for with a loan against their vacation home. Jesus. There's more. Daniel's been gambling, online poker, sports betting, some casino trips to Atlantic City. He's down about $90,000 in the last year alone." I felt my jaw clench. "The house. The one Catherine bought." "With your money?" "Yeah." James tapped another document. "Here's the interesting part. They didn't just use your $200,000 for the down payment. They took out a mortgage for the balance, about $400,000. But look at this." He showed me a loan application. I recognized Catherine's signature, but something about it looked off. The handwriting was close, but not quite right. "Is this forged?" "I can't prove it without an expert, but it looks suspicious to me. What I can tell you is that Daniel added himself to the mortgage as co-borrower, and he listed assets and income that don't exist. The bank would have caught it during verification except—" James pulled out another page. "The loan officer who approved it is Daniel's college roommate." My hands were shaking. He lied to get the mortgage? Worse than that. He's planning to refinance in 6 months, pull out equity, use the money to cover his gambling debts. Your daughter probably doesn't know half of this. Or she does, and that's why she shut me out. The realization hit me like cold water. She knows I'd ask questions. She knows I'd see through this. Maybe. Or maybe Daniel's been feeding her a different story. James closed the folder. "Either way, Tom, your daughter is in serious trouble. That house is built on lies and debt. When it collapses, and it will collapse, it's going to destroy her." I sat back in the booth, trying to process it all. "What do I do?" "That depends. Do you want to save her, or do you want to make them pay?" "I want the truth to come out. I want them to face consequences for what they've done." James nodded. "Then we build a case. Document everything. Gather evidence. And when the time is right, we watch it all fall apart." For the next 2 months, I became someone I didn't recognize. Someone patient, calculating, cold. I hired James full-time, paying him from my dwindling savings. He worked fast, pulling records and following paper trails that I didn't fully understand, but trusted implicitly. The man was a bloodhound when it came to financial fraud. We discovered that Daniel had been planning this for months, maybe longer. He'd researched how to manipulate loan applications, found a bank with loose verification processes, coached Catherine on what to say to maximize their borrowing power. The $200,000 I'd given them hadn't gone toward equity like I'd thought. Instead, it had been used to pay down Daniel's gambling debts and credit cards, making him look solvent enough to qualify for the mortgage. The house itself was leveraged to the hilt, with balloon payments coming due in less than a year. I also learned that Daniel had convinced Catherine to put the house solely in her name for tax purposes. She bore all the legal liability while he controlled the finances. If everything collapsed, she'd be left holding the bag. My anger evolved into something colder during those weeks. I stopped seeing Catherine as my betrayer and started seeing her as Daniel's victim. But that didn't mean I was ready to forgive. She'd still chosen him over me, still shut me out, still taken my money and used it as a weapon. In late August, Catherine finally called. "Dad, we need to talk." I was at my apartment reviewing documents James had sent over. "About what?" "Don't be like that." Her voice sounded strained. "I know you're upset about the wedding. I shouldn't have said those things." "Is that an apology?" Silence. Then, "Can we meet for coffee?" "Why?" "Because you're my father. Because I miss you." She hesitated. "And because I need your advice about something." That last part hooked me. "What kind of advice?" "Not over the phone." "Please, Dad." "Tomorrow afternoon?" We agreed to meet at a Starbucks halfway between her new house and my apartment. I called James immediately after. "She wants to meet. Says she needs advice." "This could be good," he said. "She might be realizing something's wrong. Or it could be a setup. Daniel might be coaching her. Either way, I'm going." "Wear a wire." "What?" "I'm serious. If she says anything about the house, the mortgage, Daniel's finances, we need it recorded. Pennsylvania's a one-party consent state. It's legal as long as you're part of the conversation." The next day, I met Catherine wearing a small recording device clipped inside my jacket pocket. James sat in his Expedition 3 parking spots away, monitoring the audio. Catherine arrived 10 minutes late, looking tired. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She hugged me briefly when we met outside, her arms thin and tentative. "Thanks for coming," she said. We ordered coffee and found a table by the window. For a minute, neither of us spoke. "You look exhausted," I said finally. "I haven't been sleeping well." She wrapped her hands around her cup. "Moving into the house has been more stressful than I expected." "What kind of stress?" "Just everything. The mortgage payments are higher than we planned. Daniel's been working late a lot, and I barely see him. And the house needs repairs we didn't know about." I kept my voice neutral. "How much are the payments?" $3,200 a month." She winced. "I know that doesn't sound like much, but with the property taxes and insurance and everything else..." I did the math in my head. On her salary as a graphic designer, that was almost half her take-home pay. "What about Daniel's income?" "He's contributing, but his commissions have been slower than expected. The market's been rough." "Catherine." I leaned forward. "Are you having money problems?" She didn't answer immediately, just stared into her coffee like it might have answers. "We're fine," she said finally. "Just adjusting. That's normal, right?" "Is Daniel gambling?" Her head snapped up. "What? No, why would you ask that?" "Because I'm your father, and I know when something's wrong. You didn't ask me here for advice about mortgage payments. What's really going on?" She bit her lip, a gesture I remembered from her childhood whenever she was deciding whether to tell me something. "I found credit card statements in Daniel's office. They were hidden in the back of a drawer." "And?" "And they show charges I don't recognize. Hotels, restaurants, cash advances, a lot of cash advances." Her voice dropped. $50,000 worth over the last 6 months. My chest tightened. "Did you ask him about it?" "He said it was business expenses that he'll get reimbursed for." "But Dad, I don't think that's true. His dad's company is struggling. There's been talk about layoffs." "Why are you telling me this now?" She looked at me with eyes that suddenly seemed much younger. "Because I'm scared. Because I think I made a mistake. Because I need my dad." It would have been so easy to tell her everything right then, to lay out all the evidence James had gathered, to explain how Daniel had manipulated her, to offer to fix it all. But something held me back. Maybe it was the memory of her face at the wedding, cold and dismissive. Maybe it was the knowledge that she'd chosen him over me once already. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "I don't know. Maybe... Could you talk to him? Man to man? He respects you." I almost laughed at that. "Does he?" "Dad, please. I don't have anyone else to ask." I finished my coffee, buying time to think. "I'll talk to him. But Catherine, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "Whatever happens in the next few months, whatever you find out, you don't shut me out again. We're family. That means something." She nodded, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. "I'm sorry about the wedding. I was wrong." "Yeah," I said. "You were." We parted in the parking lot. I watched her drive away in her new car, a BMW she couldn't afford, and wondered if she had any idea how deep the hole really was. James was waiting in his vehicle. I climbed into the passenger seat. "Got everything?" "Crystal clear." He played back a snippet of the recording. Catherine's voice came through perfectly. "This is good, Tom. She's documenting her own concerns. That'll help if this ends up in court." "You think it'll come to that?" "I think it's inevitable. Daniel's too deep. When he can't make those balloon payments, when the creditors start calling, it's going to get ugly. The question is whether you want to wait for that or accelerate the process." I watched the traffic flow past us. What would acceleration look like? We could go to the bank that issued the mortgage, show them evidence of fraud in the application. They'd investigate, probably demand immediate repayment. Daniel would be exposed, Catherine would face foreclosure, but she might also be able to claim she was deceived. And if we wait, then we watch it collapse on its own. Might take 6 months, might take a year, but the end result is the same. They lose everything. I thought about Catherine's face, the fear in her eyes when she talked about the credit card statements. Thought about the $200,000 I'd given her, money I'd never see again. "We wait," I said, "but we prepare. I want all the evidence organized. I want to know every move Daniel makes. And when it falls apart, I want to be ready to prove exactly what he did." James nodded slowly. "You're playing the long game." "I'm playing the only game that matters," I said, "the one where the truth comes out." September brought cooler weather and mounting evidence. James worked his contacts, pulling records that painted an increasingly damning picture of Daniel Ashford and his fabricated life. We discovered 3 more credit cards Catherine didn't know about, all maxed out. We found casino receipts from trips Daniel had claimed were business conferences. We traced a pattern of cash withdrawals that coincided with online poker tournaments. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. I was at work reviewing a proposal for a downtown office complex when my desk phone rang. Unknown number. "Tom Patterson." "Mr. Patterson, my name is Angela Reeves. I'm the loan officer who approved your daughter's mortgage application." My pulse quickened. "How did you get this number?" "From your daughter's application. You were listed as an emergency contact." She paused. "I need to speak with you about some irregularities we've discovered. Can we meet?" We arranged to meet that evening at a coffee shop near the bank. I called James immediately. "She's scared," he said after I explained. "My guess is someone started asking questions internally. She's trying to get ahead of it." Angela Reeves turned out to be a woman in her late 20s, professional and visibly nervous. She ordered tea she didn't drink and kept glancing at the door like she expected someone to burst in. "I could lose my job for this," she said. "I probably will lose my job. But I need you to know I didn't understand what Daniel was doing." "Tell me." "He came to me because we went to Penn State together. Said his wife was buying a house and needed a solid mortgage. Everything looked legitimate at first. Good credit, verifiable income, substantial down payment." She pulled out a folder. But then I started noticing things, small inconsistencies. The income verification forms had signatures that didn't quite match. The bank statements looked too perfect. Did you flag it? I should have. God, I should have. But Daniel convinced me everything was fine, said there were just some timing issues with how his employer processed paperwork. She met my eyes. I approved it because he was my friend, and now the bank's internal audit team is reviewing all my recent loans. Why are you telling me this? Because your daughter is going to be destroyed when this comes out. The fraud investigation will focus on the borrowers, not just Daniel. Catherine signed those documents. Her name is on everything. She could face criminal charges. My stomach dropped. Even if she didn't know? Proving she didn't know is the hard part. And even if she avoids criminal liability, she'll face foreclosure, damaged credit, potential civil suits from the bank. Angela's voice cracked. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was trying to help a friend, and I've ruined your daughter's life. I sat back, processing. When will the bank move on this? Soon. Maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month. Once internal audit finishes their review. And you'll lose your job? Probably. Maybe face charges myself for approving a fraudulent loan. She laughed bitterly. Daniel's gone dark. Won't return my calls. I think he knows what's coming. After Angela left, I called James. The timeline just accelerated, I said. We need to act now. What do you want to do? I want to talk to Daniel, face to face, before the bank makes their move. That's risky. I don't care. I want to look him in the eye and give him one chance to come clean, one chance to admit what he's done and try to minimize the damage to Catherine. And if he doesn't? Then we help the bank build their case. James found out that Daniel played tennis every Saturday morning at a club near their house. The following weekend, I was waiting in the parking lot when he finished. He didn't recognize me at first. I'd lost weight since the wedding, and I was wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap. But when I stepped into his path as he walked to his car, his face went pale. Tom, what are you doing here? We need to talk. I don't think that's a good idea. Catherine said you two had coffee, that things were tense. Things are about to get a lot worse than tense. Get in your car. We're going for a drive. I'm not going anywhere with you. I stepped closer. Daniel, I know everything. The gambling, the debt, the fraudulent mortgage application. I know about the balloon payments you can't make, and the credit cards Catherine doesn't know about. I know you used my money to cover your debts while putting her name on legal documents that could send her to prison. I kept my voice low and steady. So you're going to get in your car, and we're going to have a conversation about how you're going to fix this. The color had drained completely from his face. You can't prove any of that. I have bank records, casino receipts, recorded conversations with the loan officer who approved your mortgage. Want me to keep going? He unlocked his car. I climbed into the passenger seat. We drove for 10 minutes in silence. Daniel's hands were tight on the wheel, knuckles white. Finally, I told him to pull into an empty parking lot behind a closed shopping center. Talk, I said. It's not what you think. Then explain it to me. He slumped forward, resting his head on the steering wheel. I made some bad investments, tried to recover the losses, made things worse. My dad's company started failing, my job became unstable. I panicked. So you decided to drag my daughter down with you. I was trying to build a foundation for us. The house was supposed to be an asset we could leverage. Leverage for what? More gambling, more debt? I was going to fix it. I had a plan. Your plan involved fraud. It involved forging documents and lying to a bank and putting Catherine's name on everything while you controlled the money. I turned to face him fully. She trusted you. I trusted you, and you've destroyed both of us. What do you want? His voice was hollow. I want you to tell Catherine the truth, all of it. Tonight. I can't. Then the bank will. Internal audit is nearly finished with their review. In a few weeks, maybe less, they're going to file a fraud report. Catherine will be named as a co-conspirator. She could face criminal charges, Daniel. Prison time. Bankruptcy. Her life destroyed because you were too much of a coward to admit what you'd done. If I tell her, she'll leave me. She should leave you. You're a liar and a thief. He turned to look at me then, and what I saw in his eyes was pure desperation. Please, give me time. Let me try to fix this. You can't fix this. The numbers don't work. You're too deep. Then what's the point of telling her? Why not let her have a few more weeks of peace before everything explodes? Because she deserves to know. Because she deserves a chance to protect herself. And because maybe, if she has enough warning, she can separate herself from you legally before the authorities get involved. Daniel sat in silence for a long moment. You gave her that money as a gift. That makes you complicit. What? You gave your daughter $200,000 that we used for a fraudulent mortgage. The bank could argue you were part of the scheme, that you knew what we were doing and helped facilitate it. I felt rage surge through me, hot and blinding. You would throw me under the bus to save yourself? I'm just saying we're all in this together. If I go down, Catherine goes down. If Catherine goes down, you might too. So maybe the smart play is for all of us to keep our mouths shut and hope the bank doesn't look too closely. I stared at him, seeing clearly for the first time what my daughter had married. Not just a gambler or a fraud, a sociopath willing to destroy anyone to protect himself. Get out of the car, I said quietly. What? Get out. Walk home. And Daniel? I waited until he met my eyes. You have until Monday morning to tell Catherine the truth. If you don't, I will, and then I'm going to the bank myself with every piece of evidence I have. I'll testify against you. I'll help them build a case that puts you in prison. Do you understand me? He stumbled out of the car, leaving his tennis bag on the back seat. I drove off, watching him shrink in the rearview mirror. Catherine called me Sunday night, voice shaking so badly I could barely understand her. Dad, I need you. Please come. Now. I drove to their house, a 20-minute trip I made in 12. The house was beautiful from the outside, a colonial with white siding and black shutters, a perfect lawn, a 2-car garage, all of it built on lies. Catherine answered the door with red eyes and tear-stained cheeks. He told me everything. She led me into the living room where Daniel sat on the couch, head in his hands. The coffee table was covered with documents, bank statements, credit card bills, printouts of gambling losses. Show him, Catherine said, voice hard. Show my father what you've done. For the next hour, Daniel laid it all out. The initial bad investments, the gambling to try to recover, the mounting debt, how he'd convinced Catherine to use my gift for debt consolidation instead of a down payment, how he'd lied on the mortgage application, inflated their income, forged supporting documents. Catherine sat frozen throughout the explanation. When Daniel finished, she turned to me. You knew. How long have you known? About 2 months. And you didn't tell me? I wanted proof first, and I wanted you to hear it from him. 2 months. She laughed bitterly. I've been living with this man, sleeping next to him, planning our future while you both knew everything was a lie. Catherine, I was trying to protect you. Protect me? You let me keep signing documents, keep making decisions based on false information. That's not protection, Dad. That's abandonment. The words hit like a slap. I'm here now. Yeah, now that it's too late. She stood, pacing. The bank is going to investigate. I could face criminal charges. My career is over, my credit is destroyed, and I'll probably lose this house that I never really owned anyway. We can fight this, Daniel said weakly. We can hire lawyers. With what money? Catherine whirled on him. We're broke. We're worse than broke. We're drowning in debt and legal liability. Your father could help. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Catherine said, her voice ice cold, Get out. What? Get out of this house. Pack a bag and leave. I don't care where you go, but you're not staying here. Catherine, please, we can work through this. You destroyed everything. You lied to me, you used me, you put my name on documents that could send me to prison, and now you want my father to bail you out after you threw him under the bus? She was shouting now. Get out! Daniel looked at me, perhaps hoping I'd intervene. I said nothing. He gathered his things and left through the front door, closing it quietly behind him. Catherine collapsed onto the couch. What do I do? I sat beside her. First, we get you a lawyer, a good one, someone who specializes in financial fraud. I can't afford a lawyer. I can. She looked at me with hollow eyes. Why would you help me after what I did? After I shut you out? Because you're my daughter. Because no matter what happens, I'm not going to abandon you. I took her hand. But I need you to be completely honest with me from now on. No more secrets, no more protecting Daniel. We tell the lawyer everything. Everything? Everything. The only way through this is total transparency. Over the next several days, we worked with a lawyer named Sharon Mitchell, a former prosecutor who specialized in white-collar crime. She reviewed all the documents James had gathered, took Catherine's statement, and outlined our options. The bank will likely file a complaint with federal authorities, Sharon explained. The FBI will investigate mortgage fraud. Your daughter will be named as a defendant along with Daniel. Even though she didn't know? I asked. Proving she didn't know is challenging. She signed the documents. Her name is on the loan application. The prosecution will argue she should have known something was wrong. What's the best-case scenario? Catherine cooperates fully. She provides evidence against Daniel, testifies about his deception, shows a clear pattern of him controlling the finances. If we can paint her as a victim of his manipulation rather than a co-conspirator, we might get charges reduced or dismissed. And worst case? Federal prison, probably 2 to 3 years, plus restitution, plus a permanent felony record. Catherine went even paler. I could go to prison? It's possible, but I don't think it's likely if you cooperate. Sharon leaned forward. The key is getting ahead of this. We need to approach the FBI before they approach us. We volunteer information, we demonstrate your ignorance of the fraud, we separate you from Daniel legally and financially as quickly as possible. What about the house? I asked. Gone. The bank will foreclose. Given the fraudulent application, they'll move quickly. Catherine should plan to move out within 90 days. The words hung in the air. Catherine had lived in the house for less than 4 months. I'll help you move, I said quietly. You can stay with me until you get back on your feet. I don't deserve your help. Maybe not, but you're getting it anyway. The FBI investigation moved faster than Sharon expected. Within 3 weeks, agents interviewed Catherine, Daniel, Angela Reeves, and myself. They seized documents, reviewed bank records, built a timeline of the fraud. Daniel hired his own lawyer and immediately began trying to shift blame. He claimed I had known about the plan from the start, that the $200,000 gift had been my idea to help them qualify for the mortgage. He painted Catherine as an active participant who'd known exactly what they were doing. It was all lies, of course, but lies can be dangerous when they're told convincingly. The breaking point came in mid-November, when Daniel's lawyer subpoenaed me to give a deposition. We met in a sterile conference room downtown, fluorescent lights humming overhead, a court reporter's fingers flying across her stenotype machine. Daniel's attorney was a man named Richard Crane, expensive suit and cold eyes. He spent 3 hours trying to catch me in contradictions, suggesting I'd been complicit in the fraud, implying I'd encouraged my daughter to deceive the bank. Mr. Patterson, isn't it true that you provided the $200,000 specifically so your daughter could inflate her assets on the mortgage application? No, I provided it as a gift for a down payment. But you never verified how the money was used, did you? I trusted my daughter to use it appropriately. Or perhaps you trusted that she and Mr. Ashford would use it in whatever way got them the largest mortgage possible? Sharon objected, but the pattern continued. Crane was trying to build a narrative where I was the architect, and Catherine and Daniel were just following my instructions. It was absurd, but I could see how it might create reasonable doubt. During a break, Sharon pulled me aside. He's desperate. Daniel knows the evidence against him is overwhelming, so he's trying to muddy the waters. Will it work? Not if we stay consistent, not if Catherine holds firm. Catherine's deposition came 2 days later. I wasn't allowed in the room, but Sharon told me afterward that she'd been magnificent. Clear, direct, unshakable. She'd admitted to signing documents without reading them carefully, to trusting Daniel with their finances, to being naive about the mortgage process. But she'd also made it crystal clear that Daniel had controlled everything, that she'd discovered the fraud only when I'd forced him to confess. The prosecution offered Daniel a plea deal in December. 10 years, reduced to 7 with good behavior, plus full restitution to the bank. He turned it down, convinced he could beat the charges at trial. He's an idiot, Sharon said when she heard. The evidence against him is airtight. He's going to trial and he's going to lose. What about Catherine? They've offered her immunity in exchange for testimony. She takes the stand, tells the truth about what Daniel did, and she walks away with no charges. What's the catch? She has to testify against her husband, under oath, in open court. Catherine struggled with the decision for 3 days. She'd moved into my apartment after the bank started foreclosure proceedings, sleeping in my bedroom while I took the couch. We'd fallen into an uneasy routine, ordering takeout and watching old movies, not talking much about the case. On the 3rd night, she came out of the bedroom and sat beside me. "I'm going to testify," she said. "You're sure? He destroyed my life. He used me, lied to me, nearly sent me to prison. Why should I protect him?" "Because he's still your husband." She shook her head. "No. He stopped being my husband the moment he decided I was expendable." She pulled her knees to her chest. "I filed for divorce yesterday. Sharon helped me with the paperwork. How do you feel?" "Relieved, angry, sad." She looked at me. "I keep thinking about the wedding, how happy I was that day, how stupid." "You weren't stupid. You were in love. I was blind. There's a difference." She stood, heading back to the bedroom. "Thanks, Dad. For everything. I know I don't deserve it." "Stop saying that." "It's true, though. I shut you out. I took your money and threw you away, and you still saved me." "That's what family does." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah, I'm learning that." The trial started in February. Federal courthouse, wood paneling and marble floors. A judge who looked like she'd seen everything and believed nothing. Daniel wore a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Catherine wore a simple blue dress and no jewelry. The prosecution built their case methodically. Bank records, forged documents, testimony from Angela Reeves about how Daniel had manipulated her. They showed the jury his gambling losses, his maxed-out credit cards, the pattern of deception that had started long before the mortgage fraud. When Catherine took the stand, the courtroom went silent. The prosecutor led her through the timeline. How she'd met Daniel, how they'd fallen in love, how he'd proposed, how I'd offered to help with a house down payment, how Daniel had convinced her to put everything in her name for tax purposes. "Did you know the mortgage application contained false information?" the prosecutor asked. "No. Daniel handled all the paperwork. He told me what to sign and where." "Did you verify the income figures on the application?" "I trusted him. He said everything was accurate." "When did you learn the truth?" "In September. My father confronted Daniel, and Daniel confessed everything." "How did you feel when you learned what your husband had done?" Catherine's voice cracked. "Betrayed, used, terrified that I was going to prison for something I didn't do." Daniel's attorney tried to shake her during cross-examination, suggesting she'd known all along, that she'd benefited from the fraud just as much as Daniel. But Catherine held firm, her answers consistent with everything she'd told the FBI. When she stepped down, she walked past Daniel without looking at him. I testified next, explaining the gift, my discovery of the fraud, my attempts to get Daniel to confess. Crane tried the same tactics he'd used in the deposition, but in front of a jury, his implications felt desperate and thin. The defense's case lasted 2 days. Daniel took the stand and claimed I'd masterminded everything, that Catherine had known about the fraud, that he was just a patsy caught between a manipulative father-in-law and a greedy wife. It was spectacular in its audacity and utterly unconvincing. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all counts. The judge set sentencing for 2 months later. Daniel was remanded into custody immediately, his bail revoked. As the marshals led him away in handcuffs, he looked back at Catherine one last time. She stared straight ahead, face blank. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Sharon handled them while Catherine and I walked to my car. "It's over," she said quietly. "Yeah. I thought I'd feel better. I just feel empty." "That's normal. You've been living in crisis mode for months. Now you have to figure out what comes next." She leaned against the car. "I lost everything. The house, my savings, my marriage, my career. I'm 32 years old and I'm starting from zero." "Not zero. You have your freedom, your clean record, a chance to rebuild. And you. I have you." She met my eyes. "I'm sorry, Dad, for all of it. For the wedding, for shutting you out, for believing Daniel over you." "I know. Do you forgive me?" I thought about that for a long moment, about the rage I'd felt in the vineyard, the cold satisfaction of watching Daniel's lies unravel, the complicated grief of seeing my daughter suffer. "I'm working on it," I said honestly. "But I'm here. That's what matters." Daniel's sentencing hearing happened on a cold morning in April. The judge was the same woman who'd presided over the trial, her expression unreadable as she reviewed the presentencing report. The prosecution asked for the maximum 15 years. They cited the sophistication of the fraud, the number of victims, Daniel's complete lack of remorse. They noted that he'd attempted to blame everyone around him rather than accepting responsibility. Daniel's attorney argued for leniency. He painted a picture of a young man who'd made mistakes under financial pressure, who had a gambling addiction that needed treatment, not punishment, who could contribute to society if given a second chance. Catherine and I sat in the gallery. She'd debated whether to attend, but ultimately decided she needed to see it through to the end. The judge asked if Daniel wanted to make a statement. He stood, hands clasped in front of him. "Your Honor, I made terrible decisions. I hurt people I loved. I betrayed trust. I understand that I need to face consequences." He glanced back at Catherine. "I'm sorry for the pain I've caused. I hope someday to make amends." It sounded rehearsed, empty. The judge seemed to think so too. "Mr. Ashford," she said, "you had every advantage: education, family support, opportunity. And you chose to squander it all through greed and deception. You manipulated your wife, betrayed a friend, defrauded a financial institution, and when caught, you attempted to blame everyone but yourself." She sentenced him to 12 years in federal prison, full restitution to the bank, and 3 years supervised release. He would serve at least 85% of the sentence before being eligible for parole. Daniel's face crumbled. His father, sitting across the aisle from us, put his head in his hands. Catherine sat perfectly still, expression neutral. As they led Daniel away, he looked at Catherine one final time. She looked back, and for just a moment I saw something pass between them. Not love, not forgiveness, just acknowledgement. This was how it ended. Outside, Catherine breathed deeply, like she'd been holding her breath for months. 12 years, she said. He'll probably serve 10 with good behavior. That's still a long time. It's what he deserves. She nodded slowly. I keep waiting to feel happy about it. Vindicated. Something. But I just feel tired. That's because revenge doesn't heal anything. It just closes a chapter. We walked to the parking garage in silence. As I unlocked the car, Catherine said, What happens now? Now you figure out what you want your life to look like. You find a job, rebuild your credit, maybe go back to school. You move forward. In your apartment? I can't keep living on your couch, Dad. Stay as long as you need, and when you're ready, we'll find you your own place. She climbed into the passenger seat. I got an email yesterday from a design firm downtown. They want to interview me. That's great. I told them about the trial, about everything that happened. I figured they'd find out anyway. What did they say? That everyone makes mistakes, that what matters is how you recover from them. She smiled slightly. They still want to meet with me. See? Things are looking up. Maybe. She was quiet for a moment. Dad, can I ask you something? Sure. The money. The $200,000. Do you hate me for it? I thought about that as I drove. The money represented years of work, sacrifices I'd made, dreams I'd deferred. It was gone now, used to pay Daniel's gambling debts, absorbed into the black hole of his fraud. I'd never get it back. I don't hate you, I said finally. I hate what happened. I hate that Daniel used you. I hate that I couldn't protect you from it. But no, I don't hate you. Even after I slapped you away at the wedding? Even then, she reached over and squeezed my hand. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. Over the following months, Catherine slowly rebuilt her life. She got the job at the design firm, started small but proved herself quickly. She moved into a studio apartment in May, modest but hers. She attended therapy twice a week, working through the trauma of the marriage and the betrayal. I helped where I could, providing furniture from my storage unit, co-signing her lease, taking her to dinner every Sunday. We didn't talk much about Daniel or the trial. That chapter was closed. In June, the bank completed foreclosure on the house. A new family moved in, young couple with 2 kids, probably with no idea of the history contained in those walls. Catherine drove by once to see it, then never went back. The divorce finalized in July. Catherine kept her maiden name, something she'd changed back to immediately after the trial. She was Catherine Patterson again, starting fresh. September marked 1 year since everything had fallen apart. I was at Patterson Engineering, working on calculations for a hospital expansion, when my desk phone rang. Tom, it's James. I hadn't spoken to him much since the trial. He'd sent a bill for his services that I was still paying off in installments. Hey, what's up? Remember Angela Reeves, the loan officer? Yeah. She reached out to me. Asked if we could meet. Thought you might want to be there. We met her at the same coffee shop where she'd first approached me. She looked better than the last time I'd seen her. More color in her face, less fear in her eyes. I wanted to thank you, she said. Both of you. For not throwing me under the bus during the trial. You made a mistake, I said, but you tried to make it right. I lost my job, obviously. Paid a fine to the State Banking Commission. But I didn't face criminal charges, and that's because you two could have implicated me more than you did. You helped Catherine, James said. You gave us information that protected her. That counted for something. How is she? Angela asked. She's doing well. New job, new apartment, moving forward. That's good. That's really good. Angela wrapped her hands around her cup. I wanted you to know something else. About Daniel's father. I leaned forward. What about him? His company collapsed. Ashford Capital Management filed for bankruptcy last month. Turns out Daniel wasn't the only one cooking the books. His father had been hiding losses for years, paying old investors with new investor money. Classic Ponzi scheme. Jesus. The SEC is investigating. Criminal charges are likely. The whole family empire is gone. She smiled without humor. Karma, I guess. After she left, James and I sat in silence. You ever wonder what would have happened if you'd just let it go? He asked. If you'd walked away after the wedding and never looked back? Every day. Regret it? I thought about Catherine, about the year she'd endured, about the price she'd paid for Daniel's crimes. Thought about the money I'd lost, the relationships damaged, the trust broken. No, I said finally. If I'd walked away, Catherine would have gone to prison. Daniel would have destroyed her completely. At least this way she had a chance. You could have told her earlier, warned her before it got so bad. Maybe. But she needed to see Daniel's true face herself. If I'd just told her, she might not have believed me. I finished my coffee. Sometimes the only way out is through. In October, Catherine called me at work, voice excited in a way I hadn't heard in a long time. Dad, I got promoted, lead designer on a major account. That's fantastic, sweetheart. And they're giving me a raise. A real one. 20%. You earned it. I want to take you to dinner. Somewhere nice. My treat. We went to a steakhouse downtown, the kind with white tablecloths and attentive waiters. Catherine ordered wine, and we toasted to her success. I've been thinking, she said between courses, about the money, the $200,000. Catherine, we don't need to talk about that. Yes, we do. I can't pay you back, not all at once, but I want to start. $500 a month. It'll take me 33 years, but I'm going to do it. You don't have to. I do. For me, not for you. I need to make this right. She met my eyes. You gave me everything, and I threw it away. I can't undo that, but I can try to pay back what I took. Okay, I said quietly. If that's what you need. It is. She smiled. Besides, it'll give me an excuse to see you at least once a month when I drop off the check. You don't need an excuse for that. I know, but still. She raised her glass. To second chances. To second chances. Time moved differently after the trial. Days that had once dragged now seemed to fly past. I settled back into my routine at work, took on new projects, mentored younger engineers. Catherine thrived in her new job, won awards, built a reputation. We had dinner every Sunday, alternating who cooked. Sometimes we talked about the past, but mostly we focused on the present. Her latest design project, my upcoming retirement, whether she should adopt a cat. She was dating again by the second year. Nothing serious but healthy. Men who treated her well, who respected her boundaries, who didn't try to control or manipulate her. She'd learned to recognize the warning signs. In the third year, I finally paid off James's bill. He'd given me a significant discount, claiming it was for old times, but I insisted on paying every penny. When I made the final payment, he took me out for drinks. You did good, Tommy. Not many fathers would have fought that hard. Not many fathers would have had to. True. He swirled his whiskey. You hear Daniel's up for parole next year? My stomach tightened. Already? Good behavior. Model prisoner, apparently. Takes classes, participates in programs. His lawyer's going to argue he's been rehabilitated. What are the chances he gets out? Hard to say. Federal parole board is tough, but it's possible. James studied my face. How do you feel about that? I don't know. Part of me wants him to serve every day of his sentence. Another part just wants it over. And Catherine? She's stronger now. She could handle it. I finished my drink. But I hope they keep him locked up. Catherine learned about the parole hearing through her lawyer. She had the right to submit a victim impact statement, to argue against his early release. Are you going to write one? I asked over Sunday dinner. I don't know. What would I even say? The truth. How his actions affected you. She pushed food around her plate. The truth is complicated. Yes, he destroyed my life, but I also rebuilt it into something better. I'm happier now than I ever was with him. She looked up. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. So, do I tell the parole board that? That I've moved on and I don't care what they do with him? You tell them whatever feels right. In the end, she wrote the statement. I didn't read it, and she didn't share what she'd said. But 2 months later, we learned that Daniel's parole had been denied. He'd serve at least 3 more years. "How do you feel?" I asked when she told me. "Fine. Relieved, I guess." She smiled. "Mostly I just feel free. Like that chapter is finally, truly closed." 5 years after Daniel's sentencing, I retired from Patterson Engineering. They threw me a party, gave me a plaque, made speeches about my contributions. Catherine attended, professional and polished in a designer suit she'd created herself. "Proud of you, Dad," she whispered during the toasts. "Proud of you, too." I'd planned to travel in retirement, maybe take some classes, finally read all the books I'd been meaning to get to. But a week after my last day, James called with news that changed everything. Daniel's father died, heart attack. And here's the interesting part. He had a life insurance policy, big one, and guess who's listed as a beneficiary? Who? Catherine, from before the divorce. He never updated it. The policy was worth $500,000. After taxes and legal fees, Catherine stood to receive about $320,000. "I don't want it," she said when her lawyer explained. "It's your money," Sharon Mitchell replied. "Legally, ethically, completely yours. Daniel's father hurt you too, indirectly. This is restitution." Catherine looked at me. "What do you think?" "I think you should take it. Use it to build the life you deserve." "What if I paid you back? The full $200,000 plus interest?" "Catherine, please, Dad, let me do this. Let me close that loop." We sat in Sharon's office, papers spread across the desk. Outside, the city hummed with afternoon traffic. "Okay," I said finally, "but on one condition." "What?" "You use the rest to start your own design firm, your own business, something that's completely yours." She smiled, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. Deal. The money transferred 2 months later. Catherine insisted on writing me a check for the full amount in person at my apartment on a Sunday afternoon. $200,000, the exact amount I'd given her 5 years earlier. "We're even," she said, handing it over. I looked at the check, at my daughter's signature, at the careful way she'd written out the amount. Then I folded it and put it in my pocket. "Yeah," I said, "we're even." She launched her firm in the spring. Patterson Design, named after both of us. I helped with the business plan, introduced her to contacts from my engineering days, watched as she slowly built a client base. 6 months after opening, she landed her first major contract. A downtown hotel renovation, the kind of project that could make a career. She called me from the client meeting, voice breathless with excitement. "I got it, Dad. They chose me." "Of course they did. You're brilliant. Come to the office tonight. I want to show you the designs." Her office was a small space in an old warehouse district, exposed brick and big windows. She'd decorated it simply but elegantly, her sketches and renderings covering one wall. She spread the hotel plans across her drafting table, talking through her vision. I listened, asking questions, offering suggestions from my engineering perspective. We worked together until midnight, the way we used to when she was in college and needed help with projects. As we packed up, she said, "Thank you. For everything. For not giving up on me. I'm your father. That's my job." "No, you went beyond that. Way beyond." She hugged me tightly. "I'll spend the rest of my life trying to deserve it." "You already do." 8 years after the wedding, Daniel was released from prison. Catherine learned about it through a notification system for victims. She called me immediately. "He's out." "I know. What if he comes here? What if he tries to contact me?" "He can't. There's a restraining order. If he violates it, he goes back to prison." "I'm scared, Dad. I'll be there in 20 minutes." I stayed with her that night, sleeping on her couch the way she'd once slept on mine. We watched old movies and ate ice cream and didn't talk about Daniel. but he never came. Never called, never wrote, never tried to reach out. As far as we could tell, he left the state, started over somewhere else. Maybe he'd learned his lesson. Maybe he was still the same man, just better at hiding it. Either way, it didn't matter. Catherine had moved on. She had her business, her independence, her life. She'd transformed her betrayal into strength. 9 years after I'd given her $200,000 in a briefcase, Catherine called me to her office. She had something to show me. I arrived to find champagne on ice and a framed certificate on her desk. Her business had been named one of the city's top design firms. 3 years in operation and already making waves. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said, pouring champagne. "Yes, you could have. You're talented and driven and smart. But I wouldn't have had the chance. Daniel would have destroyed me completely if you hadn't fought for me." I raised my glass. "To you, for surviving, for thriving, for becoming the person you were always meant to be." "To us," she corrected, "for second chances and new beginnings." We clinked glasses. Through her window, the city spread out below us, full of lights and possibilities. I thought about the wedding, about the slap, about the rage that had nearly consumed me. Thought about the choice I'd made to fight instead of walking away, all the pain and struggle and work that had led to this moment. "Worth it?" Catherine asked, reading my mind. I smiled. "Every second." We stood at her window, drinking champagne and watching the city, a father and daughter who'd been broken and rebuilt. We'd lost money and trust and years of peace, but we'd gained something more valuable. We'd learned that family isn't about perfection or unconditional forgiveness. It's about showing up, doing the hard work, and choosing each other even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Outside, the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Catherine leaned against me, the way she used to when she was small. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, sweetheart." And that, finally, was enough. 3 months after our champagne celebration, on a gray November morning, I received a letter. No return address, postmarked from somewhere in Ohio. Inside was a single handwritten page. "Mr. Patterson, you don't know me, but I know what you did. I'm Daniel's cellmate from prison, or I was until he got out. He talked about you constantly, about Catherine, about the trial. He asked me to deliver a message if anything happened to him. Daniel died 2 weeks ago. Overdose. They're calling it accidental, but I was there the night before. He knew exactly what he was doing. He wanted you to know he was sorry. Not for what he did to Catherine, he was always too proud to admit that fully. But for underestimating you. He said you were the only person who ever really saw through him. He also wanted you to know about the money. There's an account, offshore, about $80,000 he'd hidden before everything collapsed. The account information is below. He said it belongs to Catherine, that it's the last piece of what he stole from her. Maybe because he was the closest thing I had to a friend inside. Maybe because everyone deserves a chance to make one thing right before they go. Do what you want with this information. Michael Torres. Below was a series of account numbers and passwords. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the letter for a long time. After everything, after all the anger and the trials and the rebuilding, he was simply gone. I called Catherine. "Can you come over? There's something you need to see." She arrived an hour later, concern etched across her face. I handed her the letter without explanation. She read it slowly, her expression shifting from confusion to shock to something I couldn't quite identify. And he left me money. Hidden money. Money he probably stole from other people. Probably. She set the letter down, hands trembling slightly. "What do I do with this?" "That's your decision. We could try to track down where he got it, return it to victims. We could turn it over to authorities. We could walk away and pretend this never happened. Or I could take it. Or you could take it." She walked to my window, looking out at nothing. I don't feel sad. Is that wrong? You feel what you feel. I thought I'd gotten past all of it, built my new life, moved on. But holding this letter, knowing he thought about me until the end, her voice caught. It brings it all back. I stood beside her. He made his choices. You made yours. His death doesn't change what happened or who either of you became. The money would help. I could expand the business, hire more staff, take on bigger projects. It would. But every time I used it, I'd think about him, about where it came from. Then don't take it. Let it sit in that account forever, or report it and let the authorities figure it out. She turned to face me, and I saw steel in her eyes that hadn't been there 9 years ago. No, I'm taking it. Every penny. Because he was right about one thing, it does belong to me. Not as payment for what he did, but as proof that I survived him, that I'm still here and he's not. 2 weeks later, after verification and legal consultation with Sharon, Catherine accessed the account. $83,000, exactly as the letter had stated. She donated half to a non-profit that helped fraud victims, used the other half to establish a scholarship fund for young designers from disadvantaged backgrounds. He wanted me to have his money, she told me over dinner, so I made sure it went to people who'd use it better than he ever did. What about the letter? Do you want to keep it? She smiled, cold and final. I burned it. Some ghosts don't deserve to haunt you. That night, alone in my apartment, I thought about Daniel Ashford, about the young man who'd married my daughter with lies in his heart, about the prisoner who'd spent years behind bars thinking about what he'd destroyed, about the broken soul who'd ended his own life with a needle in his arm. I didn't feel satisfaction at his death, didn't feel vindication or closure, just a quiet acknowledgement that some stories end not with redemption, but with emptiness. Catherine had won, not because Daniel died, but because she'd refused to let his choices define her. She'd taken everything he'd tried to destroy and forged it into something stronger. The next Sunday, at our regular dinner, she raised her glass. To surviving, she said. To thriving, I corrected. Outside, the city lights blazed against the darkness. Inside, a father and daughter who'd weathered betrayal and emerged unbroken sat together, finally, truly free. Daniel Ashford was gone. His legacy was nothing but ashes and painful lessons. But we remained, and that was the only victory that mattered.